Hey there everyone, I'm Luke and today we're diving down the tube of Toons for a bit of a different video today. I thought I'd give you a bit of a news update. Of course, at the minute we're in the middle of our Scoobuary event, and when the news dropped about this brand new Velma series, well, I did want to start doing some news coverage soon, and well, I thought this is the perfect opportunity for that, so I'm also going to be throwing in a few of the other big stories from the last week. So on to the first headline, the one we're all here for this Scoobuary. HBO Max has announced a brand new Velma series. So coming from the Hollywood Reporter, it says Velma is an adult-focused comedy that offers a look at the origin story of a bespectacled and underappreciated brain in the Scooby Gang. The series offers a look at the complex and colourful past of one of Scooby-Doo's beloved mystery solvers, which sounds very interesting. What we have here is a series that's all about Velma, who arguably, as the article says, is one of the most underlooked characters of the gang. I feel like she never seems to get quite as much focus as the other members of the gang. She's always sort of been what you see is what you get. She's the brainy one. It is coming from Mindy Kaling, who will be executive producing the show and presumably writing some episodes of it, as well as being the voice of Velma. So that's right, Velma will be having an Indian American voice actress, and it's quite possible that Velma the character will be Indian American herself, which is certainly a welcome change. The Scooby Gang has always been incredibly white, and to add some sort of diversity into there is certainly a welcome change. Of course, it's not actually the first time that Velma's ethnicity has been changed. In the Cartoon Network live-action prequel movies, Velma was portrayed by an Asian American actress. In the 2020 film Scoob, Velma was voiced by Gina Rodriguez, a Hispanic American actress, and she does speak one or two lines of Spanish in the film. I do find it interesting that Velma always seems to be the one that does get the change, but perhaps it's due to the fact that she's probably had the least development previously, and so she's the character that people are more willing to change. I will say I was a little apprehensive. Normally when I hear like adult animated comedy, you tend to think down the lines of Family Guy, American Dad, and while I'm not here to knock those shows, I will say they are not my cup of tea, and it's not really the sort of thing I'd be looking for from the Scooby-Doo franchise. So at first I didn't know how to feel, because I do feel like that's normally the route that a lot of these adult animated shows go down. But taking a look at who's working on the show, it's been executive produced by Mindy Kaling and Charlie Grandi, and them two have worked together quite a lot. They both worked on The Office together, The Mindy Project, The Champions. Now I've not seen all those shows, but I will say I love The Office. I quite enjoyed what I saw of Champions, so the fact that those two work well together is definitely a good sign. And I will say their style of humour, while yes is aimed at an older audience, isn't quite the same as the super wacky like Family Guy or Seth MacFarlane style. And so looking at that, it did sort of put my mind at ease that I don't think that's where they're going with it. Additionally, executive producing on the series is Sam Register. Now, Sam Register has been working at Warner Bros. Animation for a long time. I only checked back as far as a decade, but he's worked on pretty much everything to do with Scooby-Doo. He's worked on the last three series, Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, Be Cool Scooby-Doo, and of course the seminal Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, as well as working on a lot of the direct-to-video films. And so he knows these characters. I'm sure Kaling and Grady have come in with like fresh ideas and know how to take this adult approach to comedy, but Sam Register's going to be there because he knows the characters and he knows what works for them. Additionally, he's also worked on a lot of the DC animated films. Now, most of those films are PG-13s or 12s. Some of them are even R-rated or 15s. And so he definitely knows how to produce adult animation. And again, in those situations, the animation isn't adult because it's super wacky, silly humour. They're mainly adult because they're quite violent. And so looking at the people working on the show, it definitely set my mind at ease that these people could create an adult animated Scooby-Doo show that I will enjoy. And while the initial THR article didn't go into much detail on the show, it even states that the HBO Max description offered no clue as to Velma's sexuality. Obviously last year Velma made headlines when it was confirmed that she was in fact a lesbian in the Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated series. Also, what does this mean, an origin for the character? Because although some versions portray the gang as adults, the most iconic versions of them are as teenagers, and so an origin for the character must have the character be very young, which makes you wonder how adult can they actually go? Well, Mindy Kaling took to Instagram to say how excited she was to work on the project, and she actually gave a little bit more information to clue us in on just exactly what this show is going to be about. I'm so excited to be voicing this iconic character. Velma will struggle to navigate the pitfalls of high school, her budding sexuality, and a serial killer intent on murdering every popular kid in town. Firstly, it tells us exactly what they mean by an origin story. Velma is going to be in high school. It says it's going to be talking about her budding sexuality. Now, is that just mean she's a teenager going through puberty, or is that talking about her sexual orientation? And is the show going to explore her sexuality as a lesbian? We don't know, which is an incredible opportunity to make people feel seen. You know, it's been long speculated that Velma is a lesbian. Mystery Incorporated confirmed that that portrayal of her was. So it'd certainly be a nice idea to have a version of the franchise actually be able to explore that openly and not just hint at it the way Mystery Incorporated had to do in a show from 2010 airing on Cartoon Network. And while I would love for it to be properly acknowledged in a kids version of the show, it's great that we're going to get it here. And then we get what seems to be the plot of the show, of there being a serial killer intent on murdering every popular kid in town. Now, that is the dark, gritty take on Scooby-Doo that I feel like a lot of people have been waiting for a long time. More recent versions of the show has portrayed the gang being in actual danger, with villains that look like they will actually be killing people, but we've never seen an actual death. And so this is certainly an interesting take. Now, whether this will be just the opening episode or whether it's going to be an overarching story throughout the season is unclear at this stage. But the way it says that that's what the show is about, I'm sort of leaning towards the latter, that it's going to be overarching. And if that is the case, I'm really looking forward to that. And while we know it's a Velma show, I think we are probably all wondering, will the other members of the gang be featured at all? Is it just a Velma-focused show? Or is it a Velma solo series? Traditionally, the gang all go to the same high school, and so if we are seeing Velma in high school, it's very likely the rest of the gang will be there, at the very least, in the background. And also, what does this mean by the origins of Velma? You know, she doesn't have any superpowers, she's just a girl that's very clever. Is this going to be the tale of how she gets the turtleneck sweater? Is it actually going to end up being an origin series of the gang, and we're going to see them solve their first mystery, but maybe Velma's the one that takes the lead, she's just the main character of the show, but the others will all be there. And again, if we do see the show exploring Velma's sexuality, are we going to be seeing Marcy, Hot Dog Water? Will she be Velma's girlfriend on the show? I think a lot of people would love to see that, so I'm definitely interested in what they're going to be doing. You know, I do feel like Warner Brothers have been trying to do something with Velma for a while. There was the recent Daphne and Velma movie that was sort of an origin story because the gang hadn't formed yet. Fred, Shaggy and Scooby were nowhere to be seen. They have also released the recent Velma and Daphne book series. At the minute there's 2 released. I only have the first one, but I will say it was very good. They were like young adult novels where Daphne and Velma teamed up to solve a mystery. Fred, Shaggy and Scooby were all in the books, just had slightly more minor roles in the background. That was quite a dark, edgy take on the Scooby franchise, and I feel like that's probably more likely what this show is going to be similar to. And the only other thing we know about the show is that it's going to be coming to HBO Max in 2022, so that's only next year, but that means they probably are some way into development of the show. They're probably midway through pre-production, if not having already started production. At the same time, there was a few other shows announced. A Clone High reboot, which has been given a 2-season order. Of course, it's coming from Lord and Miller, as well as the other original creators, Bill Lawrence, as well as the former writer on the show, Eric Rivinoya, and it's going to be produced by MTV Studios, who made the original series, but that's an incredibly popular show that never got its due when it was originally airing, so it's great to see it return. Now, they have said it is going to be a reboot. I think it's going to be the same concept, similar characters, but they're going to be going to school in the present day. You know, if you were just to do follow-up episodes of the old show, it'd probably feel weird because they were in an incredibly naughty setting. It was like the noughties distilled. I love the original Clone High. I've only seen a few episodes of it, but every time I saw it, I loved it. So it's definitely going to be great to see more of that show. They also announced a few other animated shows. Fired on Mars, a workplace comedy set on the Martian campus of a modern tech company. Sounds great. That's comes from a few SNL writers. Hello Paul from Sean Solomon is about a neurotic millennial cat whose intense job and freeloading mouse roommate stresses him out. That sounds fun. Obi is about a 30-year-old man-child chasing his dreams to become an artist while navigating adulthood with his friends. That might feel close to home to some people. Uncanny Valley tells a story of 3 awkward domestic helper robots who kill their human owners and try to assume their identity. Sounds weird but fun. And Cover from Ryan Michael Bendis and David Mack are adapting their acclaimed DC Comics series Cover, an animated espionage, thriller and conspiratorial love letters to the comic book industry that was nominated for multiple Eisner Awards. I've not read Cover. it is on my list. I do want to read it because I do normally like Brian Michael Bendis' work. He's a bit hit and miss. I don't love everything he's done, but the things I enjoy that he's written, I've loved, and considering this has received such critical acclaim and has won a lot of awards, I am looking forward to reading that one. So to see that it's being made into an animated feature is fantastic. And before we get to our next story, I'm just going to remind you to hit that like button. It really helps out the channel and lets it get seen by more people. And if you aren't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Why don't you do yourself a favour and hit that big red button? Now our second story today is a sad one. Sadly, Disney has announced the closure of Blue Sky Animation Studio. Of course, Blue Sky is probably best known for its Ice Age and Rio franchises, but they've done a lot of films over the years. Robots, the Peanuts movie, the recent Spies in Disguise. These films never seem to do amazingly well, but they're very well produced films. I enjoy them, and of course it is incredibly sad when any animation studio closes. And if you're wondering how Disney closed them, Blue Sky Studios were originally owned by Fox, and when Disney bought Fox and most of its assets, they took control of Blue Sky Animation Studios a few years back now. They released one film under them, which was Spies in Disguise. Of course, the bulk of that work was produced under Fox, and the film didn't do incredibly well. It only grossed $171 million worldwide on a $100 million budget. When you factor in the marketing budget and the money that the cinemas and theatres took from the movie, it's quite likely that it did lose money. But at the same time, I do feel like this isn't something Disney had originally intended. We have seen them include like Blue Sky Animation Studios like proudly amongst their like studios that they own, but of course this pandemic has hit lots of companies, and even a company as large as Disney has been losing money despite making so much money at the box office in 2019. Well, unfortunately a lot of that money was paid out as bonuses to shareholders that year, which certainly isn't a good thing. It should have been reinvested in the company, and as such, when the pandemic hit last year, even Disney was unprepared. They closed down a lot of their theme parks, their cruises, and they've not released many films in the last year. And of course, without the films coming out, it's harder for them to sell a lot of the merchandise based on those films. As much money as Disney has made in the last year, they have lost a lot. And I think they just decided they needed to cut losses where they saw them. And Blue Sky, unfortunately, wasn't making enough money for them. This is incredibly sad. Apparently it affects 450 employees' jobs. The studio's final day will be in April, so there's just under 2 months left of them being employed, but they have halted production on the film. The Mona apparently had 10 months left of production, so in the remaining 2 months they just weren't going to finish it. So if they've halted production, it's likely that a lot of people are already out of jobs. Now it does say Disney will be working with employees to see if they can fill in any open positions in their internal studios. Of course, Disney own a lot of animation studios. They own Walt Disney Animation Feature, Pixar Animation, as well as Disney Television Animation, Marvel Animation, Lucasfilm Animation. I imagine there'll also be open positions at Disney's live action studios, Fox, Marvel, Lucasfilm, that will be able to take them on, like concept artists, storyboarders. A lot of those things are still needed in live action. So hopefully it won't be all 450 people that will be out of jobs. Hopefully a lot of them will be able to transfer to the other studios Disney owns. But according to Deadline sources, there aren't any plans for any of Disney's studios to absorb the studios. And I suppose that does kind of make sense. If you are trying to cut costs by closing down a studio, you aren't going to then just re-employ the entire studio's staff because you're not really saving that much money. It's nice to know that some of them will go to other studios, but unfortunately a lot of jobs have been lost, and that's incredibly sad. And it's hard not to think that surely this could have been avoided. This is just the latest in a long list of layoffs that the Walt Disney Company has announced in this last year. And maybe if they didn't pay the higher up so much money, if there wasn't as big a wage gap, then maybe this could have been avoided. It's an incredibly sad story, and anyone who's been affected by the closure or of any of the Disney layoffs in the past year, you know, our hearts go out to you. It's incredibly sad, and we will all be thinking of you. And moving on to our final story for the day. Netflix has announced that they have purchased the rights to the Redwall children's book series, and they will be adapting them into movies. The Redwall books are like a series of anthology books set in this fantasy world with anthropomorphic animals, about a peaceful group of animals that every now and again will have to fight for their home. And like I said, it's an anthology series, so think less Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and more Chronicles of Narnia. Each book takes place in a different time period and as such focuses on different characters, and it is also released out of order. Some characters who are legendary figures in early books we then jump back to and see their stories unfold in later books. One such character is Martin the Warrior, and he's the most frequent recurring character throughout the book series, and as such Netflix are planning an event series surrounding the character. Now this isn't a book series I'm particularly familiar with, but from what I've seen it looks incredibly fun and I can't wait to see what Netflix does with them. Currently the first film, Redwall, and the Martin the Warrior series are in development, and hopefully if that does well that means Netflix will adapt more of the books. In total there are 22 books, so it's definitely going to keep Netflix busy for a while if it is successful. But probably one of the most exciting things about this story is that it's being written by Patrick McHale, who of course was the creator of Over the Garden Wall, the limited series on Cartoon Network. That series was just fantastically weird and bizarre, but in all the best ways, and from what I can see, so are these books. So he seems like the perfect person to bring it to life. And that's pretty much it for today's news, guys. This is the first time I've done a video like this, and if people are interested in me doing more news coverage on animation, let me know that this is what you want to see more of. And if you did enjoy the video but you don't want to leave a comment, well, another way to let me know that you enjoyed it is if you hit that like button. And if you do want to see more, why don't you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to be notified the next time we dive down the tube of tunes. Alright everyone, cheers. Thanks for watching Tube of Tunes. If you want more from the channel, hit subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on, follow us on our socials. Hope you liked it. Cheers.